This is the action phase. This means if you want your character to be involved in the following act, so long as you are a verified player by way of Discord, you can submit your actions by heading to our website, pndrpg.com. There, you will fill out a short form that will give me everything I need to know about what your character's goals, actions, and intentions are. Not too much, not too little, but just enough for me to adapt it into the story in a way that not only fits the narrative, but also ends up being something unexpected, just to keep you on your toes. Let's continue on to our arcs. Act 2's arcs have now been modified to include our 3 most recent tributes. These tributes can and will change the pace of the arc you're in, which in turn can warrant a shift in everyone's strategic approach to achieving their goals. Good fun, good role playing. Let's continue. The big and bigger dilemma. Min Gray and the Solarium Coalition, along with R-Type X and Samuel Maximus, congregate at the Grand Teleslab excavation site, rethinking their priorities. The sonic cries of Min's Gruul Saber seems to have been a dinner bell for these multi-dimensional guests now trickling into their plane more frequently. Suddenly, a lightning storm begins to form as, appearing from nothing and seemingly nowhere, a large, gaudy throne filled with indescribable jewels bound by brass and leathery, nightmarish tendrils appears, forming a small crater in the concrete. A large, muscular, 8-foot-tall woman with pale blue flesh, donning a chaotic armored regalia with aesthetics similar to her throne, sits leaned forward with both elbows on her knees, clapping slowly. She stands up and dusts the anomalite from her shoulder, and then immediately addresses Min Gray directly by name. Min recognizes this entity as Unel-Du, a lesser eldritch god and the bitter older sister of a rock god whose name shall not be spoken. Malross asks if she knows who this person is, which Min Gray replies, "A little." She tells the others to leave now, or they'll never be able to warn others and address the uncrypted issue. Unel-Du informs Min that her Gruul Saber is disrupting the surrounding planetary realms, including her own. Planetary realms? The others listen perplexed, until Min provides clarity on how existence is structured. Unel-Du then throws a jab at Min by adding that it sounds amateur, and her campaign with the Gruul Saber since she's received it has been nothing but underwhelming. Min was happy to hear that the Teleslab amplification was so effective that her dimensional neighbors were calling the police, but she didn't enjoy the compliment that followed. But she didn't expect anything less coming from Unel-Du. Unel-Du has arrived to see what the source was and extinguish it, but decides to propose a deal. The deal is, Unel-Du won't destroy Min and the fish tank of abominations she lives in if Min can best her in a performance of skill. Appearing over Unel-Du is a snake-shaped guitar, the Elder Gander. It lands into her hands and begins glowing. With what seems like a far more urgent dilemma, the uncrypted attacks are taking a backseat to this Eldritch God's ego, unless our player characters can find a way to handle both. What will happen? The source of it all. Tempest, Gate, and Haven Guard work hard to make up for lost time fumbled by the minister. Now, with the research recovered from him, they are headed in the right direction. The Survey are indeed the problem, but the answer to the underlying problem appears out of reach. That is, until Leaf discovers encrypted intel woven deep within the data that the minister couldn't detect, data thought impossible to hack into. With Leaf's help, they discover that the answers possibly lie in what is being dubbed by Leaf as the source code, and it can be found within the instigator's ship, which is currently somewhere hidden in the tank. Meanwhile, the Iron Republic and migrant refugees are free to live their lives in the city, and with leaders like Rezanok pioneering the revolution and documents such as the Anvil Accords backing them, they strive to start a new life and make great headway. That is, until hitting a wall that has equal momentum. A powerful figure by the name of Avalon Hyperion speaks out against major organizations that support the migrants, such as the Mesa Mart and the Dizzy Whiz Fizz factories, and wages war on them in Rezanock. The Hyperion advancement is moving to advance Avalon Hyperion's vision for Haven City, a haven city where the refugees are turned away and the resources are given to the rightful people, the actual citizens of Haven City. With Haven Guard needed to support Tempest in locating the source code, protecting the migrants from Hyperion, and protecting themselves in the light of the tower attacks from Scabbard, they run the risk of spreading themselves thin. What will happen? Scales that will tilt. After what had transpired, many in the colony feel conflicted with themselves and others. Over time, and with the help of others who either weren't present or unaffected by the mind wipes, help John Quill realize he is experiencing severe memory loss, more so on the topic of the colony's goals. As a collective, they realize Atlas is a potential threat, and this was before they began to see the Unity Atlas propaganda from within Haven. It seems the goal of peace will not be achieved without conflict. Meanwhile, to the vast majority of colonists, the propaganda has worked and have already began building a line in front of the Unity Atlas recruitment center in the outskirts of the colony. What will the leaders of the colonists do? Jeremiah sits at his desk in deep thought. Legion's analysis was not lost on his mind. Could this colony possibly become more of a threat than Atlas could handle? Legion mentioned there was at least one obvious android in their colony. The odds were shaky, and shaky wasn't good enough when you're in the process of connecting continents and saving Haven City. The futurist brings Jeremiah his phone. Jeremiah smiles. He was already in the process of tipping the scales. We see a Legion kin agent inside of a brisk lair, deep within a temple, fumbling with a flashlight as they try to read illegible text scrawled on a scrap of parchment. Not only is it incomplete, it is unlike any language we've seen, the agent says. Jeremiah asks if there's anything else of use in the temple. A magic amulet, a hoard of gold, a lamp, anything. The three Legion kin all say no at the same time as they observe the surrounding walls covered in etchings of dragons. Jeremiah was slightly disappointed. He tells them to just take everything and ends the call. The agent complies and reaches for the scrap, when suddenly the back of his head is yanked backward as half of his spine gets ripped out while being tossed to the temple floor, joining his dead kin. From behind, we see the most menacing Callidian known to Haven. Brezalek, the ruthless leader of a guerrilla Callidian army, the hidden underground, approaches the scrap and mantle. One of his own, a wet and murky Callidian shaman, brings to him a large scroll and what appears to be the complete remainder of the scraps, a mysterious document fabled to contain immense knowledge and power. Brezalek retrieves the scrap from the mantle with one blood-soaked hand and holds it to the rest of its parts. We cut to an overhead view of the temple as it begins to glow a hot orange and the area around it begins to catch a blaze. What will happen? Let's summarize and put things into perspective. Each arc has multiple plots unfolding, multiple plots to tie your character to. I encourage players to carve their story into these events, all while attaching yourself to relevant topics, if possible. The source story arc has our PCs trying to find the remedy to the tank losing its power and dying, which spells disaster for all life. They know of a fix called the source code, but needs to now find the instigator's ship. Does anyone remember where the instigator left his ship? In addition, we now have a struggle over political views and freedom between migrants and an organization called the Hyperion Advanced, which could turn bloody. And lastly, we have a low-key threat building against Haven Guard by Scabbard. In the bigger dilemma arc, Min Gray, the Coalition, Sam, and R-Type are privy to a new secret threat in that of the Uncryptids, but are jammed up with an eldritch god of rock who wants to settle a beef with men that could also potentially result in the world being destroyed. I'm adding an additional factor to both of these arcs that take place in Haven City. I will randomly choose a player to be targeted by an uncryptid attack. So stay on your toes or have allies that will. In the Scales That Will Tilt arc over in Ebu, Atlas and the colonists have conflicting goals, and Atlas marked their territory. Both parties seem to realize that the other is an immediate threat and are currently at a stalemate. Anything could tilt the scales in either side's favor, and the outcome truly depends on the actions both of these groups take in this episode. A critical factor in all of this comes in the form of an NPC enemy named Brezalek, who seems to also be in the area and has stumbled upon great power. I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone does, and remember, if you're in an arc already, you must stick to it. If you're new to the series or to an arc, keep in mind that you could really affect the outcome of the arc in its current state. Good luck to all.